This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Sales Podcast, the podcast for beer distributors by beer distributors. I'm Bud, your host, here with co-host Mikey. Mikey's finally wearing a vest, been making fun of me for being cold in Michigan for the last month, but you have finally succumbed to the cold, saying it's freezing today, and it is, a balmy, 53 outside or something like that?
It was 37 this morning at 8 o'clock when I had to go to my son's school for donuts with grown-ups, and they had it outside because it's Michigan. It's October, right? It's supposed to be warm.
I may or may not have, cannot confirm nor deny that I may or may not have left my window open last night in my office, so I have a blanket on.
I love it. Yeah, for your Florida blood, it's rather chilly.
Well, and I told myself last night, it was midday, and I cracked a window open, and then it was making too much noise, leaf blowers and other stuff outside. So I just wound it just so close, and I'm like, I'm going to leave that open. And I completely forgot about it and didn't do anything about
it. And now you're freezing.
And now I'm freezing. Yes.
This is the time of year where the swing goes from the 30s at night to 60s, maybe even 70s, low 70s during the day. Yep. Up and down, up and down.
Up and down for sure. Well, on a not so light note, we recorded last week's episode before all the news came out around what was going on in North Carolina. Mikey's done some reporting for us. Mikey, how is North Carolina, all the devastation from Helene playing out for, we don't have a lot of knowledge about how it's hitting some beer distributors just yet. Hopefully get something a little bit later, maybe in the episode. But on the brewers side, what are we hearing in the field?
Not good, man. Obviously, we've all watched the news and we've seen the videos of the devastation down there, and it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible to see all that, and it's hitting our industry pretty hard. So Highland Brewing Company, Sierra Nevada, New Belgium, they've all closed their tap rooms indefinitely. They've all suffered some major damage, and I'm sure the last thing you want is floodwaters in a brewery, right? That's some of the cleanest facilities you'll ever walk into. So on top of that too, locals, Wicked Weed, Highwire, they've closed all of their locations. Wicked Weed has some pretty good distribution too. So to close all of their locations is going to hit hard. Sierra and New Belgium, yeah, they have some backup breweries, especially New Belgium, probably sitting a little bit on the better side with the Bell's Brewery here in Michigan.
They've got two other huge breweries.
Yeah, to rely on. But on the other hand, too, New Belgium has really grown. So they need that production to keep up. So we're going to see the trickle-down effect for sure. Product supply, bottlenecks coming to distribution. We're going to see some outages from all of those breweries as well, which is going to definitely impact sales, definitely impact what we're doing out there, cause holes, cause out of stocks. So it's terrible to see what's going on. My heart goes out to everybody that was affected down there. And I hope that some of these breweries can make a fast turnaround and get back on their feet before it's too late. I worry about the smaller ones, and not really so small, but like Wicked Weed and Highwire and stuff like that. That's all of their production. So when you talk about closing down for months at a time like that, I hope that they can recover. I really do.
Yep. The kind of craziness that goes through from a storm like this is the recovery process, and then some of the infrastructure work that starts first, cleanup and infrastructure work that starts first, where a lot of outsiders come into the community. Think of, road workers, construction workers, line workers for electrical power, pipes, things like that, for utilities. And we do a little bit of context. Had a past client has since sold their business in Houma, Louisiana. Big hurricane came through. I don't remember which one it was, but big hurricane came through. This wholesaler picked beer in the dark with no electricity for the better part of 2 weeks, getting beer on the truck and still getting product out to retail, to help the retailers, because the world has to still spin around. So shout out to all the beer distributors out there in this area who are probably still doing the good work of getting product out. So retailers have something to sell. The world will still spin around and support everybody that's going to come in and start to clean up the area for sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Good vibes sending everybody's that way. So we did our, research, Mikey, and which means that I looked in Google and found it perfectly, or looked on the Gmail and found it perfectly where how are beer distributors doing in North Carolina? And although operations look like they might be impacted, I mean, the network is stepping up to the plate. You've got Adams of North Carolina donating 40,000 bottles and cans of water. You got Caffey sent multiple trucks of supplies to Western North Carolina. Cherokee Distributing delivered 7,000 gallons of water to storm victims. Gold Coast Distributing delivered 1,000 cases of waters to hard hit areas in Florida. That's obviously down in Florida. I said that. Holston, there are boys Holston's delivered 50,000 cans of water to Johnson City, Tennessee. And you got KW delivering 150,000 cans of water to impacted communities across North Carolina and South Carolina. Tri-Eagle Sales, 100,000 cans of water to recovery in the Florida Panhandle. And Tryon raised over 10 grand for weekly supply drops to storm victims in North Carolina. Like, that is incredible. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different operations step up
That's
to the
awesome.
plate and moving the needle. And in addition to that, North Carolina Beer and Wine Wholesalers Association, so that would be the association of state of North Carolina, donated 25,000 today to North Carolinians affected by Hurricane Helene. So that is incredible. And NBWA combined 75,000 in donation to the North Carolina Disaster Relief Fund. So, like, everybody in the network is in the mix on this for sure.
Yeah, they stepped up. I think it was 75 combined. NBWA, North Carolina Beer and Wine Wholesaler Association, and the Independent Beer Distributor Relief Fund all chipped in on that, which is so awesome. It just shows the power of the beer industry when we all come together. How we can make good things happen for sure.
And we care about our communities, so this
We
is
do.
a cool thing to see. We service, live, work, and partner with these communities in a big way. And this is an example of how family ownership and the group that run these wholesalers stepped up to the plate in times of need. So it's fun to see, for sure.
Yeah.
As sad as the outcome is or why we're here, it's always awesome to see our partners step up to the plate and get the job done.
Yeah, community outreach is one of our biggest roles as a distributor, and when we have the chance to and the means to step in and help out, which usually we do because we have the trucks, we have the warehousing. Some of our supplier partners have canned water ready to go for situations like this, so we do have the means to step in, and it goes a long way with our community, and just shows that we're part of the community. We're there to support and help in any way, and that we're partners. I remember this kind of hit close to home a little bit for us. You think way back in the day when we had the chance to help out our community by delivering canned water. We had a oil pipeline burst in our county, and it went right directly into the river that ran through our territory.
Yeah.
And it was just a giant mess, and cleanup efforts were just huge. I mean, there was a lot of oil that had been pumping. I think it had been pumping before they had realized, that it was actually spilling in, and we stepped up and we got a bunch of canned water from Anheuser-Busch, and I had the privilege of driving the truck out there for all the cleanup workers, and that was just so cool. I'll never forget it, pulling in and all those volunteers and big red Budweiser truck. I had to honk the horn. I think that's the main reason I still had my CDL, right?
It definitely wasn't because you were delivering beer. You didn't want to.
Hey, now I did sometimes, but no, it's so good to see, and it goes a long way with our community, and it's great press too.
Yeah, and I hope we have another hurricane bearing down on the Florida area. So and this looks like a doozy. By the time this comes out, we'll know what impact it had, but it doesn't right now. It doesn't look good. And, we're going to see, we don't have any major breweries. I mean, Cigar City, but they have other brewing facilities that they can brew out of. So as far as, production goes.
Isn't like one of the big co-packing breweries in the greater like Lakeland or Orlando area though too?
I'm not sure.
I think it is.
Okay.
I think there's a big brewery, and that's one of the things that maybe these smaller breweries in North Carolina take advantage of is some of the co-packing space that's available, or slack, production level slack in other breweries to try to co-pack some of their products back out and get themselves back in stock and keep their businesses operating.
Yeah. Hopefully, I mean, this is the time to just get your head on a swivel, figure out some different ways, and get it out there, right? And get your head in the game, I guess, and figure out a different way to make your product and get it out to distribution. But I think that we're going to definitely see some major bottlenecks in the supply chain, which leads us into today's episode.
Yeah, Brew Hub is in. Doing a little bit of Googling on the side here. Brew Hub is a big co-packing facility in Lakeland, Florida. Okay. So that's probably about 7 miles inland on the way, whatever highway it is on the way from Orlando to Tampa. So hopefully that facility isn't impacted too much, but that will be in the eye of the storm, pretty close for sure, based on the current projection. So
yeah, and I mean they're going to get dumped on with a lot of rain. So even if they don't get the storm surge and the high winds, I mean that whole area of Florida is going to get dumped on by a ton of rain.
Yeah. So good vibes, hearts, thoughts, prayers, all that good stuff out to the community and the industry dealing with its challenges already in North Carolina, and then, potentially looking to deal with the challenges in the southwest part of Florida, and central Florida. So hopefully all is well. We will have an update at a future episode.
Maybe you can give us a live update. Aren't you heading
potentially
down?
We're supposed to go Friday.
Yeah.
Friday. We'll see. They've turned off. It's not the right way. They have shut down the Orlando airport already. They shut down last flight in at 8 a.m. this morning. Ceased operations. They shut down Tampa's airport yesterday. They'll probably shut down West Palm today, and maybe Fort Lauderdale tomorrow, or at least maybe tonight. So this is let's not add to the problem program. And the parks have shut down, which they did not shut down for Helene. So the park shut down today at 1:00, Wednesday, October 9th. And then they don't plan to reopen at all Thursday. Maybe Disney Springs is going to open for the latter part of Thursday with some maybe restaurant service or, food dining service limited later in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, not a good time for a Disney vacation.
Not great. I mean, there are a couple funny Instagrams out there around like, this is when all the locals go because there are no lines.
Sure. Yeah. You get to use your pass, right? Your pass holder.
Yes. Well, today more on our normal roadmap or normal plan. We wanted to go into more of a discussion. We did our presentation, entitlements versus incentives, how to get more out of your team out in San Diego. And one of the questions that was asked prompted this episode. And the question was, what happens when my team views PFP, so my objective-based MBOs, incentive-based pay, as an entitlement? Mm-hmm. And so this episode, we're going to title it as kind of flip it on its head. So like how to make your PFP a guaranteed monthly bonus and why you shouldn't. So, this listener asked this question, really inquisitive. It's a good question to try to answer, something we could do long form. So we've turned it into an episode. So the challenge is like, has your monthly PFP program turned into an entitlement, or has it turned into so it's predictable to the point where it's expected to always get there or always get to the same number? Reliable. Yes. Yeah. So if that vibes with you, or you've got questions about how to do it, we've got answers about how to do it, and we've got ideas as to why you shouldn't either. And this hits a little home to us too, right, Mikey?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We lived in that boat. We were in those shoes for a while with, you love to say this, and I know we've said it on a lot of episodes, but making activities for activity's sake, right? Which was, let's make our PFP program and expect the guys to hit it, expect the reps to hit it every month, because it was part of their salary. It was part of their income. And it was an entitlement. And that's not how we should have viewed it at all. But I think that that's just how it had been for so long. And the reps had expected to hit it. And if they didn't hit it, there was something majorly wrong. And there was something that went abrupt. It wasn't like they were doing the extra effort to hit it.
And where we came at it from is, I was like, I'm not happy with what we're doing with PFP. And we didn't have a plan to change it or any kind of like design on it. But we had made it to the point where like we weren't happy, but we didn't know what to do next. Yeah. So today's episode is a lot about like understanding how you might not be happy and what might you be able to do next. So let's start.
And even just bringing up the conversation of I'm not happy, because the minute you said that, then Tommy and I were both like, we're not happy either. We had all had the thoughts, but we hadn't discussed it yet as a group.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was the first thing that you got? What was the jumping off point for you when it was like, I'm not happy?
We weren't seeing the results that we needed to for throwing that kind of money into a PFP program, to where it was basically just to check the box. And it was a lot of check the box on things that should be part of your everyday job, right? We've had a lot of discussion on that, to where the activities that we were paying extra money and incentivizing our reps to do were activities that were part of their normal job. That's part of their base salary, right? That's you come to work and you're expected to do these things for your base salary. I don't really need to pay you extra to do it, and there's a lot of things out there. I mean, we didn't do this, but I've heard of people, clean your car on your PFP, make sure your company car is clean, get the car washed, the interior, whatnot. We had a lot of surveys or do this kind of activity. When realistically, all of those are things that are expected of you of your normal job. That's part of your job description. So yeah, I mean, we did a lot of that stuff. And then the eye opener was, why are we doing this? We're not getting the extra results that we need, and if we put something on there that needed to drive the team that was a little bit harder, maybe it was distribution or whatever it may be, that was a little bit harder and it wasn't a solid gimme, we got a lot of pushback. Why are you taking money away? I can't go out and get this. My market, my accounts, I can't do it. And I think that was the eye opener of, wow, what are we doing with PFP? Are we just handing out the money every month and expecting everybody to hit it and making easy targets? Or are we actually driving sales and driving results through PFP?
Performance is a key message of this topic today. And I remember we are susceptible to these tricks at some point in time, or these traps, maybe better said traps, not necessarily tricks, where we had started paying people to do surveys as well on a PFP. And I remember one of the things when we got out of doing that and we totally migrated towards genuine performance-based metrics, we fell behind from now and then on completing surveys for our largest supplier. And I remember getting an argument where the supplier's rep was like, hey, you got to get these surveys done. What do we got to do to get these things done? Do we got to pay the guys? And I'm like, we pay them to do this. Mm-hmm. He's like, well, other wholesalers are getting them done faster and they're incentivizing them. And I said, here, listen up. Here's what we're going to do. Anybody who doesn't get the surveys done by Monday is fired. Is that enough money tied to it? Because they're supposed to do these surveys as part of their job.
Absolutely.
Do you think that's enough? Because that to me is it's if your base pay or 100% of your pay is expected to get these things done, and we turned it around from what is expected to be invited back to work tomorrow, and what is an opportunity for you to grow your income based on the performance you have in the market, and breaking those two apart. So one of the challenges is what happens when PFP becomes too predictable? So oversimplifying things, we fell into this trap of making it simple. One of the things that we did every single month was $100 for a new tap handle.
Yeah.
What was
on there every month?
It was every single month. And it was $100. for no rhyme or reason on what it was, or no rhyme or reason for why it was there. And it turned into like this rotating. We manufactured Rotation Nation as a wholesaler group by doing things like this. Now, the group is understanding this, but we're talking about this now because we have to understand what we did in the past or what we may be still doing to make this so predictable so that it moves in this direction. And when it becomes predictable for people, like traditional sales reps or just humans in general, like they want to have a challenge, they want to have a puzzle to solve, and they want to enjoy what they're doing. And if you make it so mundane, then they're going to operate like factory workers. And no knock on factory workers, but they are supposed to stand there and build the same widget in the same way for hours on end. That's what that role is designed to do. And if we're going to pay our sales reps $70,000 a year, which some of our clients are, and more, why are we operating them, or why are we making this where it becomes so predictable over and over again for the team? So like minimum safe sales thresholds, doing the easy wins, like build these same 10 displays, place these same pods, make these rebuys happen over and over again. Like the big question, Mikey, is like, how often or when on a regular basis should your PFP structure or your MBO structure be reviewed from a strategic sense so that it can be looked at strategically on like, are we achieving the objectives for the business as a whole?
Yeah, this goes back to 2 or 3, maybe even 4 episodes ago when we talked about PFP and goal setting and long term versus short term, right? And we talked about this in our seminar as well. But the steps, right?
Yep.
The steps up to the overall goal. So, I mean, at least every month we should be reviewing them, seeing what's working, what's not. But quarterly, yearly, we need to know what is our absolute goal as a company to get to as far as distribution percentage on this brand or whatever it may be, and break that down quarterly or break that down monthly to see how are we going to get there. What is our long-term vision and how are we going to stair step up to that, right? And then that's when we analyze it every single month. Is this working? Are we getting the results? If not, out of there. Let's try something different. Let's scratch the board. We're not getting what we need out of it. It's not moving the needle, right? We're making just we're throwing money at the wall and not getting the results that we need. So every month we need to look back, you need to review and see exactly the performance you got out of what you had for last month, what worked, what didn't. Are we getting closer to our end game? Are we getting closer to our goal where we need it to be? Do we need to step it up?
Think about what behaviors or efforts you're rewarding. Like, what are you trying to get out of people too, from a behavioral side? And one of the challenges that we fell into and our clients fall into too with PFP is that like it's a monthly recurring challenge. And, you spend 7 days, 8 days working on the plan. Then you got to build the plan. If you're building in an Excel or you're building in some other tool, it can take and be time consuming. There are people tied to it. We've tried to solve these problems with VXP for a little plug there and make it simpler, faster. So you buy time back to do more value added work. And the outcome is like, you have to break it down into 2 pieces in my mind. You have to do strategy on a longer interval. So like 6 months and biannual or annually, are we planning out what we want to get done strategy wise with the business? And then you come down and reverse engineer into that on a quarterly and a monthly basis, which is nudges in the actual application of the program. So, are you getting the results you want? And are we moving the team? And I'm, moving my hands, so like bowling ball, like bumpers. Are we keeping the team in the funnel we want to keep them to as well?
Yeah.
And as part of that, when you're making those changes, like we have to bring in, the variability in the goals and the payouts, because that predictable, reliable, universal, those are all things that are vibes of an entitlement. And we want to have some variety on your goals, or variability on the goals, so that you get those payouts more variable. And then the reps start to understand this is an entitlement. You do have to kind of revoke that from them, and you have to bring this variability into it. Once you have the variability into it, you then have to teach them how to achieve it too. Like, you have to walk through the process of teaching them how to achieve it. So how often are your goals, are your team's goals challenging? Are we making them hard to achieve? And also, are we making them potentially too hard? Because there's that thin line
Mm-hmm.
between achievable, challenging, and unachievable, demoralizing. So the first piece, and this is the way that I like to look at it, is how often are your team's goals challenging? So I always like to look at the delta difference between goal versus actual. So if you're plus or minus 5% on either side across the board, you're in a good spot. You've got, 5% of the time the team is missing by 5% or less, and the other piece of other piece is gaining or beating by 5% or by roughly 5%. So if you're in that kind of 10% pocket of plus or minus 5% on either side, you've got a group of people that are beating goals, group of people are missing goals, but we're not creating them so far that standard deviation is 10 or 20%, where you're then demotivating people to get it. And you have a big passion around demotivation. So, where do you draw the line on what you think demotivation starts, Mikey, for a sales rep?
Yeah, I hear about it a lot. And I even think about back to when we were creating PFP every month. And I know this happens, at other facilities too, but even the middle managers that are creating PFP will take the easy way out too, right? It's like, hey, I don't really have time for this month. Let's just copy and paste a lot of these from last month, right? And that happens. And I'm not putting anybody down, but I'm saying we were guilty of it. Hey,
That's reality.
we don't have
Yep.
the time to sit down, crunch all these numbers, and figure out exactly what we need for PFP. You know what? That $100 for new tap tails sure did sound good. Let's roll that again. Let's do $20 per display, whatever it may be. So on the whoever's creating the PFP too, right? Of being creative and not getting stuck in the rut and creating those predictability outcomes. But also on the other end too, when you say being too challenging and losing motivation, I see that a lot too, to where it's like, all right, my PFP this month, I know I can't hit it. It's always so challenging. I have to go out and do all this stuff, and I'm just done. I'm going to throw my hands up. I'm not even going to try, or maybe I'm confused, or I got lost. Or I've heard plenty of reps out there too that really care so much about their customers and their relationships, which is great and it's awesome, but they won't even look at PFP because they're like, I will do what's best for my customers based on their needs, not what is going to earn me some extra money. And that relationship piece is great. And that's what really sells beer is relationships. We all know that. But also, if you have reps that are like that, then you're basically wasting your time by targeting different targets. You're not getting the results out of it that you need to. Throwing money at the board that really doesn't need to be there. So yeah, I kind of went off on a tangent there.
That's a misalignment problem, which is another challenge, but that's a misalignment of goals. When you have a rep who is actively disagreeing with pursuing a goal because they're in front of these customers every single week and have to defend why they placed all of these packages in the store that are just sitting there tying up the customer's money, when they are taking it to the point of it's like, I'm not even going to place this product because I don't want to have that conversation. That is a misalignment problem.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother episode around like how to align goals. What are twofer goals that I like to call them? What are going to drive twofer profitability and twofer placements for the suppliers, for point of reference and happiness as well. And if you can do more of those and less of kind of the other things which are misaligned to profitability or misaligned to suppliers' outcomes, preferred outcomes, then you get these weird responses from reps too.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes down to when we just take our suppliers' wants, all right, whether it be incentives or what their asks are, and we just automatically roll them into PFP without doing any kind of, alignment with the company or changes. Just like, hey, this is what supplier C and D want. So here's your PFP for the month, right? Instead of just taking that and going, okay, well, how can we, I know what they want to achieve. How can we take that and put it what makes sense for our company and our customers too, right? And align that with our sales reps and kind of just dissecting what the ultimate end goal of our suppliers are and make it relevant for our market and for our reps and achievable to a somewhat, natures to where we know that we're not asking them to go out and jump on the moon to earn $15.
Yeah. Yeah. The other piece is that if you're dealing with this challenge and how to make it predictable and reliable, or you already have successfully achieved that and now you want to do something different, how do you get yourself out of it? This is the hardest part of the whole game because, we talked about this in San Diego. You want to run a test on what is an entitlement, pull it from your team. And the level of freak out that they have will tell you if they really think it's an entitlement or not. Because if you just remove it from the process or completely change the process, I mean, you would remove something like a turkey or a ham and just stop giving it to people, or the entitlement bonus of like $500 Christmas gift. Those are the things you just remove from the process and they freak out about it. In this example, you completely re-engineer the program and the process. And if they melt down over it, then they've always thought that this is an entitlement. Yeah. And they've never appreciated it as a bonus or as a variable pay plan. It is always like, no, I should make all of this, no matter what I do. No matter, all I got to do is put my right leg of my pant on first and my left leg on second, and then pull them up, strap my belt on, put a shirt on, and tie my shoes, and I should make this money. And that's not what we want to do. It's like, that's not what we're getting after. So the biggest thing that leaders need to focus on for making these adjustments is you're going to have to go through some challenging conversations, and you have to be explanatory around the why you're doing this. I am doing this because we need to get more performance. The business requires it. And I always like to talk about it from the business. The business is a person. The business is a living, breathing organism. It has sustainability challenges. It has the duty to sustain however many people on your team, whether it's 25 or whether it's 400. The business has a responsibility to sustain those families and those people. And this is what we need to do to make the business more sustainable. I don't like to make it personalized. It's not me. It's not Steve. It's not Billy. It's not Jimmy or Tyler. This is what the business needs to do to actually get this thing done. And if we move in this direction, here's what you're going to get in return from a sales team. And you got to have this like tough conversation around, you're on the bus or you're off the bus. And we got to be okay with that.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to talk about too, if you're in that situation to where your PFP is an entitlement and it has now become a portion of your rep's salaries every month that they're dependent on now because they expect it, they get it, they crush it, and you're going to come in and shake up PFP and make these targets a little bit harder to achieve, right? Not gimmies, not layups, and to drive results. It's also important to just shake up the whole entire thing, right? Take a look at your PFP versus base salary or whatever. You shake up the whole thing. If they're dependent on the 30% or 40% or whatever was in PFP, to just take away 40 or 30% of somebody's salary and say, now these are really hard, challenging targets, also may not be fair, right? So take a look at the whole entire structure, shake it all up, start new. If you're taking some out of there, maybe even think about putting some towards like like with VXP, putting some towards like a volume goal and a gross profit goal, right? That they can rely on some of that with, and also make some challenging PFP. But I think it's important to just shake it all up and restructure as needed, instead of just saying, hey, now we're going to make these targets a lot harder for you to achieve. And we realize it's 40 or 30% of your salary, and you're not going to be making as much as you were before.
Yeah. And we love shaking it all up. Like, that's one of the fun things we do. And when you
If you're going
work
to
with,
shake it up, you might as well shake up the whole damn thing.
yeah, yeah. And when you work with somebody who has done these shakeups before, you learn things 6 times faster. It's like,
Mhm.
that's like the actual statistical reliable like data point. That's not Bud armchair experting it. Like if you learn from somebody who's been this through before, or through this before, like 6 times faster by working with them or asking them some questions and having them as a partner than just trying to find your way on your own.
Yeah. And I
So,
think shaking it up too also gets rid of some bad habits.
yes.
You completely disrupt something that somebody does every day, day in and day out. I go out and get my $100 tap. I go out and get my displays. When you completely shake that up, that gets rid of some bad habits too, right? It makes
Yeah.
them come back to focus and changes the way that they go about their business too.
The other question that people are going to ask that listeners are probably thinking is, well, I've got an old team, the seasoned veterans, they don't know new tricks or they don't want to learn new tricks. Or I've got a young team and this is too much change. They won't learn how to cope with it. And I call BS on all of it because we've seen clients that have seasoned veterans that cope with the change really, really well. Quotes are like, we should have been doing this forever. Like I inherently knew this is the way we should be focusing on stuff. And I'm glad that management has gotten hip to it. I've
Yeah.
also heard like, we didn't need this change. Why are we making this change? And I've heard the same thing from young reps too. Like I didn't know any better. So I was just doing what I was told and just checking off boxes and completing tasks. But this is more fun.
Mm-hmm.
And this is more fun because I like I have a task to complete that I was more creative than what it was in the past. It's a little more challenging and it's a little more of an opportunity for me to learn and ask questions and get better. So I call BS on like, you don't have to be a seasoned veteran to get this or handle the shakeup well, and you don't have to be a young person. And if you're a leader out here, that's who most of our listeners are. If you're a leader and you run one of these beer distributors, like you set the tone, give you a little bit of a backbone here. Like, don't be afraid to set the tone to what you see fit and what you need to get done for your business's success. Because that's what a leader does. They make challenging decisions, they move the needle or they move the direction of an organization, and then they execute on it. And
Mm-hmm.
people get on the bus and they opt into that or they opt out of that. And we have to be okay from time to time with people opting out if this doesn't fit for them in the new environment.
Absolutely. Yep. And always having focus of what's actually driving the business.
Well, and I have a
Always
strong belief.
driving the business.
Yeah. And I just have a strong belief that if you are that much conviction in what you're doing and you're going to make it that creative and that much fun to come work with you and you're going to challenge people, there are people for you that want to come work for you in your markets, that want to have that kind of challenge, that are bored of doing what they're doing and they want to look for something different. So get the people that want to stay bored, get them off the bus. And you will find these new people that show up and you will hunt them down and they will opt into your organization and the whole culture of the program will change for the team overnight. And it could just be a business-wide thing if you're a small team, like that was the Atlas experience. And it could be just a sales organization culture change if you're a really big team. But you can actually manage this and like it's a lot of fun. Like we've said this before, to me, I think that's a lot of fun because you're changing the outcomes and you're getting people more excited. You're giving people a challenge and a puzzle to solve.
Yeah. Yeah, we watched it real time.
So like the summary here is like, if you have fallen into this trap or you have made your PFP predictable, reliable, available to everybody in the same capacity, you've turned it into an entitlement, how to get out of it. That's what we kind of dissected out and tried to talk about. And would love to hear people's feedback on like, are they going through these challenges? Do they know that they're going through these challenges and they're trying to figure out? So hammer us in the comments, listen, subscribe, review, tell us what you're thinking, because we feel like this is a big topic. There were over 100 people in our seminar in San Diego. This was one of the key questions. Everybody was nodding their head while it was. That's why we wanted to address it in a long form answer. So, Mikey, any other key takeaways on your end?
No, I mean, just to add on to that, I mean, it was great to have a room of 100 plus people with the live feedback of what we were talking about. And it was great. But it was also great. A lot of people came up to us when we were in San Diego and talked about the podcast and like how some of our topics really hit home. We talked about like, what kind of feedback, what would you like to hear? What kind of challenges are you having? So, I mean, I would reach out to all of our listeners too. Hit us with an email or a comment or anything if you're having some of these challenges or even success stories. That we can dive in a little bit deeper, because I think it's great. We all, as we already knew about it, but you saw it happen live in San Diego. We all have the same challenges, and it's weird. We just don't usually discuss them, when we're in a group with our peers, and people with in our same positions. So I think that to get some of these out and start talking about them a little bit more, some of these common challenges is great. So yeah, please give us some feedback.
If you're on Spotify, we've got the comments turned on every single podcast. If you want to email us, email us bud, B-U-D, at VXPtech, VXPTECH.com. Mike is just Mike at VXPtech.com. So you can email us. We won't sell you. If you got a genuine question or a comment about the podcast or an episode you want us to focus on, just send it our way. And we would also love to have you subscribe, review, and share with a friend. So we appreciate all the listeners. It was a lot of gas, right? It was a lot of gas for the fire on people coming up and talking about what we were doing on the podcast. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. So thanks to all the listeners out there. We appreciate it. And remember, if you want to make it an entitlement, we had some ways to do it today. But if you want to make it performance-based, we have some better ways to make it performance-based today too. So cheers, everybody.
Cheers.